A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back. We are here today with Tracy Eiler. She is the CMO at InsideView. Tracy, how are you doing today?
Hey, James. Thanks for inviting me.
We're going to be talking about the content that you need for sales enablement. And Tracy is really going to dive deep into how do we enable our sellers with the content that we're creating. And so I'm really stoked, Tracy. This is a talk that you've done a few times. You know this stuff like the back of your hand. So starting kind of at a high level, just tell us a little bit about, why sales enablement is so crucial for a marketer to really have their head wrapped around it.
Making sales easier is one of our top priorities in marketing. And how do we do that? We provide them with phenomenal marketing qualified leads. We provide them with brand identity and awareness and a number of other things. But I would argue that just as important is figuring out a way to enable your sellers to have intelligent conversations, with that prospect. And us marketers know that we spend a lot of money and a lot of time creating interesting content for our prospects and customers. Our sales guys and gals need to know what that content is, need to know how to use it, need to know how to augment it in their conversations and so on. And every sales team that I've ever worked with has never known where to find anything, how to use it, and so on. And it's almost a joke, right? You walk down, where all your SDRs sit or something like that, and you'll find out that, God, I really wish we had a white paper on fill in the blank subject. And you think, oh my God, we just released one 2 weeks ago and they don't know it. So we really set out in my company to solve that problem about 18 months ago because it was the number one complaint that I was getting from my own marketing team saying, sales keeps asking us for new content, but yet, we've got umpteen pieces. In fact, we did an audit, James, and we had more than 600 individual pieces of content that were like juicy content, infographics, slide decks, battle cards, ebooks, and so on. And we thought, okay, this is crazy. We can't add more to the mix. This is just dumb. We've got to get our arms around it. So we sought out to solve it. So we talked about how marketing exists to make sales easier. And the whole context of this conversation is really divided into three parts. First of all, that selling has really changed in the B2B world. There's this rise of sales enablement. And then how do you solve your content challenge? And I put together a lot of third-party information in here to help us figure out how to go about solving the problem, and that might be useful.
Yeah. So walk us through this rise of the consultative seller and walk us through this diagram.
So, analysts do all this work around buyer personas. Well, this is something Forrester is calling archetypes. So it's a fancier word for persona. But essentially what it's saying on these two axes is that you need to look at your buyer and the complexity of their buying dynamic. How many people are involved in the deal, what level they are, what their requirements are, and so on. And then on the vertical axis, what's the complexity of the thing your company is selling, of your product or service? And they are arguing that sellers need to become very consultative in order to deal with these more complex environments. They need to educate, guide, enlighten the buyer. Unless, of course, you're selling something really simple, like, I don't know, let's make it up. You're buying laptops and you're simply negotiating, like in this lower left, in an order-taking environment where all that matters is a price discount. Most of the time, our buyers are going to be in one of these other three boxes where they really need some kind of content, maybe lots of it, and some good explanations to tell them how to move next with you. The other thing that's changing a lot, James, is the millennial sales rep.
Okay.
And I've heard this described, the millennial age range being 18 to 35. And there is something like 25% of today's B2B workforce are in that age range. And by 2020, it'll be more than 50%. And those sellers are very quick learners. They're very savvy with technology. They enjoy collaboration and so on. And so one of the things we have to think about as marketers when we're enabling our millennial sellers is how they interact with content. That's another thing we need to think about.
Oh, that's great. And we recently interviewed Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've seen the recent video that went viral of his around kind of managing millennials in the workplace, and kind of it was fascinating to interview him. But this breaks down a lot of characteristics that I personally resonate with, obviously being a millennial. So I think that will be super helpful.
Definitely. And I should credit Mary Shea from Forrester with this. She's been doing a lot of work in that regard. And she's written a great report called May the Force of the Millennials Be With You. So I've studied that a lot.
Love it. I love it.
The other dynamic that's going on is well documented from CSO Insights is that 43% of reps don't make quota every quarter.
Wow.
That's a huge number, right?
Yeah.
If we as marketers can do anything at all to increase that percentage, and I'm going to argue that better use of content at the right time, in the right style, by a salesperson could really impact this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So sales enablement is the bridge, and content is a big part of this. And I want to talk about, the lessons that we learned and then how we went about doing it.
Okay.
So let's get into, kind of what's required. Another really phenomenal stat also out of Forrester that just blows my mind is this one. One in 5 days, or 20% of a sales rep's time is spent on account and content research. Just trying to figure out what's going on with my account. How should I approach them? What should I show them?
Yeah.
Where's my demo script? What's the slide deck? Is there an ebook, and so on? And that's ridiculous. You think about that, one day out of the week.
What do you think that looks like for folks that haven't got this figured out? They don't have a streamlined process for that. Is that just a rep kind of searching through the archives on their company's blog, or like digging through past emails? That what's...
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I don't know if it's as bad as digging through emails, but the companies that I've worked with, they might use Salesforce Chatter to post content. They might have an intranet where they're posting information. Most of the time, however, in our case, we found the content on the hard drives of our sales guys, and they had their favorite deck for presenting. They had their favorite competitive battle card. They had their favorite case studies, different things that marketing had produced and put into a beautiful layout to make customer facing. But guess what? Most of the time it was way out of date, and it was never complete. It was never the whole body of material that was available to them.
Got it.
I just think it's legacy. There haven't been good tools to help us manage our content to be sales facing. We've got a lot of great tools to manage our content to be customer facing, but what about our selling team that's, all over the world?
No, that makes perfect sense. So we're definitely going to dive into kind of, okay, how do we get to that where we have we've got a system in place where that's not happening, where you don't have kind of out of date content?
Yeah. Marketing has such a traditional focus of, looking outward at the prospect as we should. And, we realize if you hang around your sellers a lot, and I happen to be in our Austin office right now, which is a sales office, and it really just reminds me more than ever that our salespeople have just-in-time needs. You could do a great job as a marketer launching, a whole ebook series or something on some topic or new case studies. But if that seller doesn't need it right then, they're going to completely forget about it. Or they might have a distant memory like, oh yeah, I think marketing put out something about how you use our technology in pharmaceuticals, but they can't find it.
Yeah.
And then if they do remember how to find it, they're not exactly sure how to use it or at what stage in the selling cycle and so on. So we really sought to solve that problem. The good news though is that, this is all in our control. Content is in our control. And we went about solving that problem. And this was our journey. So I'd like the opportunity to talk how we solved it, because I'm hoping that some of the lessons we learned would be helpful.
That would be incredible. So you started, kind of the journey starts with identifying that you've got a mess in the first place.
Yeah.
So let's start there, and then we can progress through it.
Very good. So first of all, this is our mess. This is how our mess looked to sales. So if you were a seller in our company 18 months ago, all the content we had just looked like this big word cloud. There's all this stuff and it's, stored in multiple places.
Yep.
How are you supposed to make sense of all of that? So we figured it out and we went and did an audit of where all our content was. And we had content in Chatter and in Box in 2 different places. Sales was telling us they couldn't find anything. They were constantly asking us for more things. These are just 2 little screenshots of some of those requests that were coming from some of our sellers into our marketers. Anyone could be an author, so we didn't really have very good control over who could publish what. We certainly had no version control, which of course makes you cringe when you're a marketer and you realize that one of your top sellers is using a deck that's 3 revisions old. And we weren't tying whatever the thing was, like an ebook, and then how to use it together. So for instance, marketers think a lot about, is this piece of content for the top of funnel, or is this for opportunity acceleration? Is this for something to upsell after the deal is closed, and so on? And then finally, we as marketers had no visibility at all into what was being used and when. We would just put it out there. We'd put it in Box. We would attach a link into a Chatter post in Salesforce and then hope for the best. But we wouldn't know how many times it had been downloaded or when it had been used. So I think this problem list is going to be common. I think we're getting a lot of virtual head nods when folks see this.
Yeah. Okay. So you identified all the things that were kind of broken. Then what came next, Tracy?
So in terms of the scope of what was broken, we identified more than 600 pieces of content, which was anything from an ebook to a battle card to a slide deck, et cetera.
Yep.
And we figured out where they all were. And we figured out where all they were. And then we decided we needed a tool to help us. So we started doing some research because I'd heard about different products that are out there that can help you make sense of your content for your sellers. And so we went through a typical software selection process, did some research, came up with a short list, and so on. I've got some things to share, such as Serious Decisions had a report on sales asset management that was super, super helpful. Went through, every vendor and all of the requirements that you can think of when you had a problem like ours.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to pass this on, through the back door if anyone asks, or certainly if you're a Serious Decisions client, you have access to this report. I thought it was really useful. And we knew, however, that we wanted to go beyond just storing and tagging our content. We wanted to be able to see what happened when our sellers shared it. So we had other requirements, such as being able to differentiate between what we wanted our sellers to use externally and what was internal only, right? Like a competitive battle card is not something that we would want to put in front of a customer. So we wanted to be able to make it really clear, when you could use. The other thing we wanted to make sure is that we had the entire funnel or the entire customer journey. And we thought we had a pretty good idea about what content we had for what stage, but we didn't really have it in a very well organized inventory or tagged in any way. We wanted to make sure that all of our market-facing employees, not just quota-carrying sales reps, but customer success managers, sales development reps, and so on, that we were taking their requirements in mind. Because in many enterprise software companies, and of what we are, we have 6-figure deals that are often outbound sourced by an SDR. So those folks really needed a lot of care and feeding. We needed to think about the new guys as well as the folks that have been around for a while. And we needed something that could work right inside our CRM. We didn't want them having to go to a completely different tool in a completely different place. And then, if you think about like iTunes, that sort of interface, or the Amazon interface where you can give things ratings and thumbs up and rank them higher and lower and so on. We knew that some of these technologies took advantage of that, and we wanted to make sure that that was part of it. So it was beyond, we had some, higher level requirements.
Got it. Okay. So you identifying the requirements of the technology that you knew was going to help you guys make sense of this mess. And then what comes next?
Yeah. So what came next for us was we really wanted to think about the new funnel paradigm, and this image here has been something that Forrester and others have been advocating. I definitely believe in it, that you have this continuous loop from the time you find a prospect and engage with them, you close them, you grow with them, and you continue on and on. And the subscription economy, our customers all fit into this kind of model, and content plays a critical role at every single stage. So we needed to pay attention to that. We needed to think about all of our audiences in our company that were going to be affected. This is a vendor landscape from Forrester where they were looking at a similar problem. So we were trying to just think through all the issues. We made our own kind of short list of requirements that we wanted it to live in SFDC, that we wanted, there to be a way of organizing and tagging content. There needed to be a mobile version and so on. And we shortlisted down to 3 vendors. We ended up picking a company called HighSpot, which I've been very happy with. They had terrific onboarding and really held our hand, but there are many other products that can do this as well. But I was super happy with this particular vendor. And then, of course, you do all your background checking and so on. We got some great references from the vendor, but I always tell people, just go through the back door, just like you always do when you're hiring a person, right? So went through that step. And then we got to our action plan. So I'll pause there and see if there's anything you want to drill into before we talk about that.
So I think going through the vendor selection process is interesting to me. Could you maybe speak a little bit to what were some of the aspects of HighSpot that made you go with them over, you said it's a pretty crowded space now. What was it that stood out?
Yeah, that's a great question, James. And there's a few things that really stand out. So, from a feature perspective, many of these companies do similar things. And the differences for us were really twofold. One was just the interface. So slick, so intuitive, really looks like modern applications, like I mentioned a minute ago, like iTunes, right? With ratings, with, every piece of content's a little colorful tile and you can rate it up or down. You can see what your peers use and so on. That was thing one. Thing two was the administrative function of it. Really, really easy for, a manager on my marketing team to take those 600 pieces of content, look at them. She whittled them down to more than 400. We chucked 200 into the garbage because they were old, outdated, and so on, got it down to a manageable level, and then was able to basically load it up and code it up and get it ready to go. And the third thing was the ongoing administration. So the thing I was most worried about as CMO wasn't the first couple things. I knew that, we'd get a great interface because it's professional software developers making this. I knew that the tagging and the loading of the content and all of that was going to be a, several week long plan. I knew the vendor would hold our hand. The thing I was worried about was ongoing. What happens after that? When you launch, how much time is it going to take to keep this thing going? I was very worried about it. And none of the vendors had a good answer. And I was getting super frustrated. And I'm in the HighSpot meeting and I say to them, okay, guys, tell me what it's going to take, not only to get us to launch, but what about after? What's the year look like after that? How much commitment of a body do I need to put towards this? And they put this up on the screen and I was just like, oh my God, hallelujah. This is telling me for, a company like ours with around 500 items, with around 100 sellers, this is what it's going to take, the kinds of people that need to be involved. Here's what the project stages are from an ongoing perspective. It's going to mean, X percent of someone's time. And then that made me feel really comfortable because for me, it wasn't about the money, the subscription money for the software. It was going to be about the long-term effect of trying to maintain this. So they did a great job of onboarding and just keeping us up on best practices on an ongoing basis.
And has that proven to be true? Have you found that kind of the action plan that they laid forth is pretty in line with the actual resources that you've had to deploy against it?
Specific. So one big takeaway for your audience is start now. You don't have to start by selecting a vendor. You need to start with a really great content inventory. And there might be people that are like, oh, I'm good. I have a content inventory. I know what every single piece is. I know who it's targeted at. I know where it's stored. But I will be surprised if that's the case. Usually marketing teams are so busy that they don't have that librarian kind of effort going on. And this is just a little template that we built in Excel that, we used.
So the other thing that I think would happen if you go through the process of doing a content inventory is like intentionally making the effort to place a piece of think through, okay, this piece of content is going to be best in this stage of the funnel, and then integrating it into your marketing automation in that way if it's not already there. So even just thinking through our own stuff and the assets that we've developed, this would force me to think, okay, where where in our automation sequence should this piece of content be based on, different behaviors that people take once they're in your funnel.
And this is a great project. I mean, we had one person drive it. We had an intern at the time who helped, but that person, they're right in college, so they were able to help with some of it. You can essentially kind of crowdsource it across your whole team. One of these columns has a link to wherever the last column R has a link to wherever it's stored. And then we went through the whole thing and said, okay, is there anything we can kill? So that purple bar was, we coded things and said, okay, we're either going to stall this or retire it and get rid of it. And then we were able to see what things also needed to be redone. There were a few items we saw that were like, wow, this hasn't been updated in like a year and a half. It probably needs attention. So it was useful for us.
No, that's great. This is fantastic. So Tracy, could you walk through a couple of the things that you guys did to incentivize your sales team to get in there and start leveraging the content that you guys had launched in HighSpot?
Sure. So we handed out raffle tickets. We announced this competition over the course of a week, and we handed out raffle tickets. And every time one of the individuals would finish a challenge, which might be something like, go into HighSpot and find a piece of content that you're going to use, on your next sales call. And when you complete that, stick your raffle card in this big goldfish bowl. And then we did drawings of the, raffled off Visa gift cards. And then we could check that they did it, from the administration console in HighSpot. And so they liked it. It was a competition. It got them using it. And in this particular email, Matt Nickel, who was one of our SDRs, won the Thursday HighSpot $50 Visa challenge.
That's awesome. And so anytime a piece of content is accessed through HighSpot, which is really for you guys, it's all happening inside Salesforce, it automatically tags that, who looked at it,
yes,
when they looked at it. So they don't have to do anything. They don't have to mark anything or do anything like that. It's automatically tracked.
Yep. So imagine being able to, so this woman, Josna, who's the one who quarterbacked the whole project, she was just showing me a report last week where we looked at, for the second half of the year, all of the content usage, and we could see by rep who was using what. We could see how often they were using it. And then, this was a fantasy that I had, we were able to take, now HighSpot didn't do this part, we did this analysis ourselves, but we took all the content usage in HighSpot and could see what reps were using what. And we triangulated that with our sales ladder, our quota achievement ladder, and our win rates for each rep to see if there's a correlation, right? Yeah. So if you've got Susie Smith, who's the top sales rep, is she using the content in HighSpot more or less? Is she in there more or less? Well, guess what? She's in there a lot more. And, she hit 120% of her quota, and her win rate was 10% higher than anybody else.
And you're seeing the specific content she's using, so you can then obviously...
Bingo. Yep. Bingo. And, it's helping us know what do we need more of. Like, for instance, is video more popular than an infographic? Like, surprisingly enough, we found out that our infographics are really, really popular. We were doing them mainly for PR, but we found out that our SDRs and our sales reps were using them very heavily to get that first appointment. So that was a huge learning for us that we wouldn't have known any other way. So, that's super useful. A couple of other results, we were looking for adoption. So what would adoption mean? In the first 2 weeks of launching, we wanted more than half of our sellers to be in HighSpot regularly. And by the end of the quarter, we wanted almost 100% adoption. And so we keep looking at those engagement measures to make sure that they're still using it. And, looking for behavioral changes. This slide is an example of, kind of the feedback loop that we're getting from some of our sellers here, Catherine and Charlotte, telling us how much they loved being able to find what they found. They don't spend a lot of time. Remember that, back to that metric of 20% of their time is being spent trying to find content, and figuring out what to use. They're getting that time back.
Yep. I love it. This is incredible.
Yep. So what's next is there's a really cool feature, and there's products like where the seller uses the platform to pitch content out, and then they can see what happens on the other end. Did the prospect open it? Did they share it with someone else? How much time did they spend on it? And so on. And HighSpot allows you to do that as well. So now that we've got our content house in order. The next step for us is to be using it as a pitching platform so that we can see what's happening beyond the salesperson. So that's what's next for us.
Yeah, this is so good.
Yep, this is it. These are the big learnings that we have. And, I just can't underscore enough, get your content audit going now and, have one person responsible for the rollout, make sure that you plan for expansion. Now that other people in the company have seen this, they've asked to get a license, beyond just the seller. So like everyone in marketing has one now, all of our customer success managers do, and so on. And, it's really worked well. It's probably one of the best projects that I've started as a CMO in a decade. Pretty amazing.
And so this next one, having one single point person responsible for the rollout, who was that person for you guys? Was it somebody?
She was a product marketing manager. Josna Durgadas is her name. And she's 4 years out of school. You don't have to have somebody who's a VP running this kind of thing. You definitely need a champion who's going to find the budget. In fact, the way that I found the budget for this was we did a big tech stack audit because we really had gotten very complicated in our MarTech stack, and we were spending money on things that, at the time were a good idea, but they weren't core anymore. So we started scraping some things out, came up with the money, to sponsor it and drive it through, and got our sales leaders on board because, we were able to tell them, look, we're going to give your sellers back a bunch of time. And if there's one thing a seller has control over is their time. They don't have control over their time. So if we can give them back time, that we'll have a lot more success.
Love it. I love it. And so this next one, you said plan for expansion. So unpack for that again, kind of reiterate what that means.
Yeah. What it means is if you do something like this, you are going to find that more people outside of sales are going to want to get in on it. So if you're going through a user count for a budget, right? In our case, it was like, okay, we think we need about 65 licenses at the beginning. That would have been for all of our sellers and our SDRs. Well, guess what? We ended up with more like 85 after we did the rollout because all of our customer success managers said, hey, wait a second, what about me? I want to know what content to use where and when. And then all of our marketing people said, I really should be in there too. We shouldn't just have one or two people. So think about expansion, kind of ahead of time. And of course, you're hiring new people. If you're a growing company like we are, you're constantly adding new folks. So, think about that.
Got it. And then measuring beyond engagement. What are some of those things? You covered some of those earlier, Tracy, but what are some other things to think about beyond measuring engagement?
There's a couple things. One of them is I keep looking at just content, what content's popular and not popular. The last thing I want to do is maintain things that people aren't using. The first thing I ask is, well, why aren't they using it? Because it's possible that they just don't know about it. But if they do know about it and they're still not using it, then I want to kill it and not spend money on that, right? Think about the money that you save on writing and design and layout and so on. It's also teaching us what to do more of. Like I mentioned, infographics were really popular. So now we're adding one a month to the sequence when we were doing one a quarter before. Things like that.
Got it. Okay. And then focusing on designing a variety of training, is this pertaining specifically to kind of how to use whatever vendor you end up, whether it's HighSpot or another tool, training around kind of how to utilize the tool?
Yes, it's definitely that. You think about your new sellers that are coming on board, new hires. You got to get them on board quickly, but then there's that, over time, just making sure people know what to use when. And I tell you, launching it is never enough. So one of the things that Josna does is she has her little checklist of all of our different people, and she spends probably a couple hours a week just doing one-on-one check-ins, maybe 20-minute check-ins with individual SDRs or, sales reps, and kind of saying, hey, Preston, have you been in HighSpot this week? Oh, you haven't? Oh, come on, let me show you some stuff. And she'll bring him back in there, and, his eyes will light up like, oh my God, I forgot, that we had this piece or that piece, and so on. So that variety of training, we also send out little tips and tricks. We do little incentives, to get people excited to use it and so on. And then there's also the training for your own marketing people, because at least in our company, we've got a team of about 15 people. Everybody creates content. There's not a content team, everybody does. and they need to know, how to get it in high spot, how to code it and tag it correctly by stage and by persona and that type of stuff.
Got it.
So it's really kind of several things.
And then this last key learning around market success. Talk to us about this one, Tracy.
Well, I don't think marketers market themselves enough, right? Like we're constantly marketing the company and constantly talking about our products and solutions externally, but we need to market our own success internally. So, so your CMO, your VP of marketing, or your head of demand gen, or head of content, or whoever the champion is for this, can then make this a regular part of their quarterly cadence in their leadership team to say, look at what marketing has done to make sales successful. Look how much time we've given back to the sellers, and look at how much faster we're moving deals through the funnel, and look at the win rates and the quota attainment of the top users of this solution. The rest of our management team has been very excited to see it. So spend a little bit of time on that.
That's phenomenal. Tracy, is there anything else that you would want folks to know around this idea of really enabling your sellers?
I think so. Just one last. I couldn't be a marketer if I didn't mention that I wrote a book with my VP of Enterprise Sales, Andrea Austin, on the topic of sales and marketing alignment. It's super near and dear to my heart, and the book's available. It came out last fall. And it has lots of other ways that you can get your sales and marketing teams tighter. So, pick up the book if you're interested. And we talked about that on your podcast a couple months ago.
I love it. So I didn't do this at the top of the interview, but I want to do it now. So they've obviously seen some specific things that you've done to really align marketing and sales. But talk to us a little bit about InsideView and what's the InsideView team all about.
So InsideView is a B2B software company, and we provide data, insights, and connections on the top accounts that your company should be going after and all the people in them. One of the newer things that we are doing is working with our clients on helping them figure out their total addressable market, and then figuring out who are all the accounts in that market. And of course, account-based marketing is a big topic. Everybody's talking about it. You can't do ABM if you do not have really great account selection and building out all the people. In fact, we're right in the middle of that transformation ourselves. And so that's what we do.
I love it. Tracy, this has been fantastic. If somebody wants to stay connected with you or they want to learn more about InsideView, what's the best way for them to go about doing both of those things?
Sure. InsideView.com is our website, and you can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, the usual spots. I'd love to hear from folks about how they're solving this problem and any kind of problem. Content marketing is a huge issue. I think you're doing a great service.
Awesome, Tracy. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This is going to be a super, super valuable, so I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, James.
If you're a B2B marketer, we want to feature you on sites like Huffington Post, Social Media Examiner, and Chief Marketer. Every week, we send out a question related to B2B marketing. We use the responses to those questions to fuel the content we write for really popular websites. So head over to sweetfishmedia.com/questions and sign up today.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.